Hey guys, so many people are asking a lot of different questions in the comments to the how I got a 98.8 ATAR video, and so I thought I'd just make another video to explain a whole bunch of answering the questions really and just explain some extra things. Okay, the question, should I do 10 or 12 units? Okay, I answered this in the comments, but I just wanted to say it again. So basically, definitely do 10 units. That's how many units I did. And all through year 11, I always kept saying, oh, I'm doing 12 units so I can have a fallback, or so I don't need to stress in the exam, because they only take your 10 best units. So if you do 12, basically whichever your lowest 2 units are, don't get counted. But in the end, I ended up doing just exactly 10 units, which is what majority of people do, and it's so much better. Like, definitely 100% would recommend to only do 10 units, because at the end of the day, you're going to try your best in all of your exams. You're going to put your best effort and try your best in all of your exams, so you need to really believe in yourself and be confident in yourself. But if you're doing an extra subject, so for an extra 2 units have a fallback, that's an extra so many more hours of class every week, which you would normally get free periods for if you weren't taking those extra units. And during free periods, I used them so much to study. I got so much done in that time. So you would have all that time where you could be getting work done for all your other subjects for an extra subject. So that's hours of extra classes a week, and then it's hours of extra homework and assessments and studying. So it's taking time out of all of your other subjects to do an extra subject that's not even going to count. That could have gone into all your other subjects. So at the end of the day, you're investing so much time into each subject, putting your effort to do the best you can into each of them, that you're not going to need a backup if you only have 10. And really, even if you mess one up and use that backup, your overall marks for all of the others aren't going to be as high as they would have been if you were able to put more time into each of them because you only had 10 units. Another question everyone's asking is, how do you get motivated or be motivated to study or to do well in year 12? So personally for me, I'm a pretty competitive person, but I also am someone who always wants to try my best. So I didn't have a specific mark I was aiming for, because I didn't want to say I want to get a 96, because then if I got a 95, I'd be like, I didn't reach my goal. Whereas 95 is amazing. So I just said, I just want to get somewhere in the 90s that I would be happy with. I didn't put a specific goal. I also didn't have any course that I wanted to get into. I just wanted to do the best that I could possibly do and know that I've tried my hardest, and I just wanted to see what I could do if I gave it my all and tried my hardest. I'm also quite competitive, so in our school assessments, I'd be aiming to try and get full marks or come first in all my assessments. And to motivation to study, I honestly was just like, I would panic if I didn't study. Like, it was just something I had to do. If you've watched my previous video, I explained how each day I'd write the homework we got and I'd have to get it done that day. And it wasn't like, I have no motivation to do this. It was like, I have to get this done or it's going to build up and be overwhelming and I won't be able to cope with it all. So it wasn't something you had to like, oh, I can't bring myself to do it. It was like, I need to get this done now so I don't freak myself out. So that was, for me, like, my motivation, I guess, was I would be freaking out if I didn't do it, and I just really wanted to try my best and do everything that I could to. So I never had the issue of, I'm not bothered. It was just like, this has to be done. Another thing is, sometimes you're not motivated and you just have to be disciplined. If you're not feeling it and you're like, I can't, like, that's when you have to be disciplined. You have to be like, well, too bad, you've got to do it anyway. Like, for everyone's different though. Like, a lot of people asking, another thing people have asked is, did you study, did you have other breaks besides, like, because I said I didn't have smaller breaks. I would like have breakfast and study for hours and then have a break for lunch. So people were like, did you have smaller breaks in between? And personally, most of the time I didn't. Like, I just like, if I had a huge list of stuff to get done, 3 hours isn't that much time to do it, because that's like one practice paper, because the exam goes for like 3 hours. I like to study in longer periods to get more done and be more productive, but it's different for everyone. You have to find what works for you. If you find yourself drifting away or like you're not focusing on it, take smaller breaks in between. Like, just try, see what works for you. And I think a really big and helpful thing is setting goals and writing what needs to be done. You have a focus, kind of like, you have stuff you want to get done. You're not like, oh, what do I do now? You're like, okay, done that, now time to do this. And maybe if you set yourself those type of goals, like doing one timed essay, and then you can have a break after that. But really, to be motivated to study for year 12, you just have to want to do the best for you. You have to set yourself some goals, write them down. That could be, I want to get 90% in this exam, and work towards your goals. I don't know, like, if I was like, oh, I'm not bothered, I just can't do this, think of why you care. Think of the reasons you care. Make a list of things that why it matters to you to do well, why you want to do well, and definitely write goal lists. Like, I want to achieve this for myself, and if you have a goal and you're working towards it, it's more likely that you'll be motivated to work. Okay, another really good tip that I want to share about how to tackle year 12 kind of. So my physio, she's also like a mentor to me and I'm pretty close with her, told me this to start year 12. And she said to follow it like a 400 meter race plan because I'm a 400 sprinter. So basically each 100 is each term of year 12. So, and she just said run it like how you'd run a 400. So the first 100, this might sound really weird to people who don't run, but it makes sense. The first 100 from the gun, go out hard. You got to get a good start. Go out fast. And so this is term 1 of year 12. You go out hard, get yourself a good start. Get yourself into a good position. The second 100, so term 2 of year 12, is the back straight. Back straight, you're not going to keep accelerating. You need to settle into a fast rhythm, but into a steady pace. So you settle, but into a fast pace. So that's term 2. Hold a fast pace. So it's still a fast pace, but it's more of a steady pace. And you just keep your legs ticking over. I remember one of my friends said she just tried to float but fly down the back straight. So it's like when you're in your race, but you got to stay in a fast pace and just hold. So you're just holding a fast pace. So this is term 2, and this is when you just keep going. You're getting through your homework. You're staying on top of everything. You're doing the work, but you're not like gunning it too hard that you're going to hit the wall. So hitting the wall is when you like get heaps of lactic and you just burn out and you die. If you've ever watched a race with someone, or if you've ever been filled with lactic and you just can't move your body anymore, like you don't want to go so hard that you burn out in year 12 too early on. So that's why you're just holding a fast pace. Then when you get to the top bend, so the 200 mark, you kind of accelerate again and push off that top bend. So this is when you're in term 3 of year 12, and this is when you're going to start having trials. So you're going to start pushing again and accelerating, and then you come off around that bend. And then when you get into the home straight, so last term of year 12, that's when you just give it all that you've got that's left. Everything that's left, you just put, like, whatever's left in the tank is what you've got. So you just push yourself to the line, you're in pain, you just get it done. And then when you cross the line, you can die and lie on the ground and die. And the best feeling is when you run a PB and then you're just on the ground dying, but you've run the best you've ever raced. So that's how you'll feel after year 12 if you like do it like that. And that might sound really weird if you're not a runner, but I really like that. So I followed that kind of race plan in year 12. Okay, a lot of people are asking, what are actually summaries? How do I write summaries? So as I said, after we did a dot point or a topic at school, I would write a summary for that. I'd type it up, print it out. Some teachers I'd hand it into. Actually, some classes I tried handwriting summaries for, but honestly, I think typing summaries throughout the year is better, and then handwrite your HSC questions, and then handwrite obviously to study before an exam. So I would type up summaries and then for each dot point and hand them in to my teacher. Okay, so summaries basically would include, so I'm going to use my factors affecting performance summaries as an example. Okay, so summary. So I'd have my syllabus, and then I'm going to factors affecting performance as my example. So a summary, how does training affect performance? So when I did a summary after learning that at school, how does training affect performance, CQ1, I do the dot point, so energy systems, and then I'd have a little bit of information about the dot point. And this is the very first summaries I did during year 12, so they may have gotten better throughout the years. I learned how to do summaries better, but this is what I did in my first term of year 12 because we started with factors affecting performance. So you do each dash point, and I'd make sure to include all this information in each dash point. So, for example, a lactic acid system. Okay, so this dash point, ATP-PC, I would write a little bit about it, and then all this information is basically fuel source, intensity, efficiency, which is all the stuff in the students learn to. Source of fuel, efficiency, duration, etc. So I'd include that, and I'd have an example at the end. Same as lactic acid system, and then aerobic system, which are the next two dash points. So that's what the summaries were. It was just making sure you knew everything that you had to know for it. I looked at the students learn to, and writing dot points. So for the next one, types of training, I'd have at each dash point like aerobic, and then you had to include all of those different aerobic ones. So I'd have what continuous is, and I'd just write dot points. So it's a sustained effort without rest, like your heart rate is above the aerobic threshold, just stuff like that, and then have an example at the end. This is the type of information you include. So you have what it is. So I forget what those things are, you know, where it's like idea, and I is like identify, D is define, E is example, A is analyze. So I'd make sure I identified what it was, and then I went into a bit more depth, and I always had an example. So that's what the summaries look like. So that's the summaries. So basically every time we did a dot point, it was just identifying it, describing it with an example. Sometimes you'd go into further depth. They were the first summaries I did, so they're not the best ones. They did get a bit more in depth, but you don't want to do too much information because it's just your notes. And every time I finished summaries, I would also make sure I handed in a HSC question, and these I wrote. So I'd write them in this book and hand them into my teacher, and she'd mark it, and if it didn't have full marks, then I would change it, get feedback from her. So I had written a full mark question, and then by the time HSC came around, I had written a full mark question on anything in the syllabus, and I was prepared for my exam. So here's an example. I just answered I'd hand in a HSC question. So sports medicine, analyse the role that sports medicine plays in addressing the needs of children and young athletes, which is worth 12 marks. I'd write the question out and hand it in, and she wrote feedback, and I could add it to it, and then she'd give me a mark, and that has 12 marks. I was happy with it. If it didn't have 12 marks, I'd be able to change it. So by the time HSC came around, I had written a full mark question for every thing in the syllabus. And a lot of people are asking, where do I get those HSC questions from? A lot of different sources. Sometimes our teachers would set us one, but you can literally just go online, look at the past HSC papers from the last like 20 years, pick out a question. You can look up different schools' trial papers and find questions from there. You can make up your own by just looking at the syllabus and rewording a dash point into a question. Literally just anything like that, but definitely I'd recommend going to past HSC and trial papers, which you can find online, and just trying to answer as many different questions as you can, and look at the syllabus so you know where from the syllabus you're answering it from, and then just make sure you've answered a different type of question from every different part of the syllabus. Okay, so people are asking what the difference between Bibles and summaries are. So as I explained, throughout the year I would do summaries as we learned something in class and type them up, so I had notes done throughout the year. Then when it got closer to an exam, so in the study periods before an exam, I would write a Bible. The Bible, as I said, was basically all the summaries and everything we'd done throughout the year, and it had to be handwritten, but this was done in the study period like a few weeks before an exam to revise everything we'd done. I know a lot of people before an exam, because practice papers are like the most important thing. So I'd make sure I did like 10 different practice papers before the HSC or trial exams for that subject. But for me, I couldn't just start a paper, and like obviously if you pick out a paper, you're not going to remember something you studied 5 months ago at school. You're going to have to revise that first. A lot of people, because it takes longer to write a Bible, would just do practice papers and look at notes as they did it. But I literally freaked out because I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to have notes next to me in my exam. I need to be able to do a practice paper without looking at anything, like in exam conditions. So that's why I first wrote the Bible for each subject, so that when I could write the Bible, I remembered everything, I'd revised everything, and then I could do practice papers. And sometimes I might have to refer to notes, but I wanted it to be in exam conditions. So the Bible was basically like summaries, sometimes more in depth, but all written out and just revising. Because a lot of people say, what is actually studying? So for me, studying it's different than homework and exams and assessments and learning. It's when you revise content that you need to know. So you've learnt it, but you need to go over it, and you can do this by writing dot points, mind maps, anything. So it's just studying over content and doing practice papers to just revise basically what all this stuff that you've learned throughout a whole year of school, so you can remember it for the exam. So I'll show you what the Bible might look like. So I'm just gonna flick through it, but like for example, you could do a mind map. So I'd write the critical question, how can psychology affect performance? And I'd have my dot point, motivation, and then I might define it or identify whatever, and then for my dash points, you can do it in different ways. So sometimes I do a mind map like this and just have dash points like keywords. You don't have to write full sentences. You can literally write keywords like praise. It's things that are going to make you remember. So you can do mind maps like that. Sometimes I do just like writing it out like that. I made sure to write, to do some diagrams, just ways that you're going to remember it, things that make you learn. To show you a bit from the Bio Bible, for example, of how to write out Bibles, because a lot of people are like, what do you actually do in them? So it's literally just revising content, but in ways that will make you learn it and remember. So sometimes I draw diagrams like this, and it would actually help me properly understand things. Drawing things like this. That, just stuff like this. This is how I laid things out. So you can do tables, mind maps, just dot points, drawings, anything that helps you remember things. And the best way to do it is also in, again, following the syllabus, just for the structure and organisation. So you're covering everything you need to do. So that's basically the difference between Bibles and summaries. So summaries are done throughout the year to stay on top of things, so you have notes, and then the Bibles are done to study before an exam. And so as you go throughout the year, you do your summaries, you print them off, and you also do your practice HSC questions that you write and hand in. And then when it comes to an exam, you print off your notes and you can make Bibles referring to your summaries that you've done throughout the year. And then you can do practice papers, and if you get confused, you can go look at the practice questions that you handed in to your teacher for help. And basically that's a really good way to prepare for your exams. And have them definitely laid out following the syllabus, like so you have your dot points and your dash points. Try to condense them as much as possible. Don't just retype up the textbook. You only pick out the key points or things that you definitely wouldn't remember, and definitely keep your own examples in them. And you can also draw diagrams and write things on them that would help you remember or help you understand it more. That's just some more of the tips I have for doing Year 12 and just answering some of the questions that people were asking about. So yeah.